Hey guys, today I'm going to be reviewing Jurassic Park, which came out in 1993. I didn't realise that last month it turned 30 years old, so I just had to review it. This film is a science action adventure thriller directed by Steven Spielberg, who's also done films like E.T., Jaws and Ready Player One. As a kid, I loved this film and watch it all the time. It probably explains my current obsession with dinosaurs, where I have bedding, teddies, blankets, tattoos and pop figures of them. The premise of this film is that a wildlife park of dinos is made, but a breakdown causes them to escape and causes chaos throughout. For my quick overall review, I think it's a classic film that everyone should at least watch once, and I personally love it so much. It is filled with tension and scares, which I know is not everyone's forte, but there's also humour mixed in, which makes it bearable. I think it's a great film, but obviously it has its issues, especially with being an older film, but even with all that mixed in, I think that most people can enjoy it. Throughout this film, it does have a message about messing with nature, the way of life, but also corporate power, which when watching it I don't think you really notice until afterwards when you think about a few things, which I think works. The plot of this film is basically a rich guy wants to open a real dinosaur park to the public, but obviously there's the question of whether it will be safe or not. So he needs to bring him some experts to give him the seal of approval before opening the park to the public. The film instantly pushes you into a tension-filled scene where these park workers are moving a raptor into a new paddock, but it goes wrong and an employee is captured and the raptor nearly escapes. It's a great scene that works really well, and especially because it's next cut to a tranquil scene where a lawyer gives exposition to us. He basically says that Hammond needs 2 experts to come and view the park to give their seal of approval before it is open to the public. Then we get to meet the 2 experts, Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler. They are both archaeologists and very knowledgeable on dinosaurs. We get to see them in their natural environment where they're digging up dinosaur bones, but Grant also explains to people how dinosaurs are very much like birds that we have today. This causes some questions and even a kid speaks up about it, so Grant ends up scaring him into how raptors are very smart and tells them how they hunt people, which is later shown in the film and I think works pretty well. Throughout the first few scenes in the film, there's a lot of foreshadowing on what's going to happen later on in the film, which I never really noticed before this watch, but now that I have, I think it's really cool. Then we get to meet John Hannum, who is the guy who wants to open the dinosaur park. He's in their trailer when Grant and Sattler get there and he explains to them what he wants to do, but they're very hesitant and have loads of questions. They only agree to come with him when he says that he'll fund what they're currently doing. Then we get a scene where we meet the bad guy of this film, who later causes the breakdown of the park. He's being paid a lot of money to steal embryos from the park and give them to the competitors. Then we get a helicopter scene where they're travelling to the island where the park is. It's on its own island, so it's all secluded and then basically safer. This is where we get to meet Ian Malcolm, and he's basically the voice of reason throughout this film. He always asks questions about the morality and whether this should actually be done. Then we get to see them land and then drive through the park, which is where we get the iconic "Welcome to Jurassic Park."
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
Next we get the mesmerising scene where everyone sees the dinosaurs for the first time. It's full of shock and awe and just works really well. The CGI looks really good in this scene, and the scale compared from the humans to the dinosaurs is just mesmerising. Overall, it's just a very beautiful scene, and I think one that everyone knows about even if they haven't watched the film. Next, our main characters get put on an informational ride which basically tells them how they made the dinosaurs. They are basically clones made from the DNA of fossils and from other animals such as frogs. This is important because it causes problems later on in the film. Next, we get to see the laboratory where the dinosaurs are then made and then hatched. The main characters want to explore this more so they easily break out of the ride. This is where we get to watch a dinosaur actually hatch from its egg, and they explain to us that they hatch all the dinosaurs because all of them are female. This stops them from breeding and they can control them better. In the next couple of scenes, we get to see them feed a dinosaur and have dinner with Hammond. This is where a lot of questions are asked and loads of info is dumped on us, but it doesn't feel like it is.
Robert Muldoon, my game warden from Kenya. Bit of an alarmist, I'm afraid, but knows more about raptors than anyone.
The main characters then get sent on a tour around the park where they get to see more of the dinosaurs, and it's also where we meet the grandkids of Hammond. The story ends up being very disappointing though, because none of the dinosaurs are actually out and they can't see anything. This leads them to break out of the cars which they're meant to stay in and go find a dinosaur which is actually really sick. They try to find out why it's sick, and it kind of brings up questions of whether the park is actually taking care of these dinosaurs. We then get notified that there's a storm approaching, so they need to start heading back. Sattler actually stays behind to look after the dinosaur more before heading back, but the rest of the team heads back to the tour cars. This is where we get the scene where the bad guy steals the embryos after shutting down some of the security systems. He does this so he won't be caught and also so he can get away easily. When the park realises, they try and turn the power back on but can't because his systems are too secure. This then leads to a shutdown in all the park's power, which even includes the fences that keep the dinosaurs inside that are normally electrocuted. This also stops the tour cars from moving and they get stuck in front of the T-Rex hammock, which is bad when the T-Rex realises that the fences are no longer electrified and breaks free. This causes a really cool scene where the T-Rex attacks the tour cars and tries to eat the people. This ends up with the lawyer character being eaten, Ian Malcolm being injured, and Grant being stuck with the kids inside the paddock after the T-Rex has pushed the car into it. From previous scenes in the film, we know that Grant basically hates kids and doesn't do well with them, so him being stuck with the kids is obviously going to develop his character throughout the film. Sattler and the hunter then go to see how the people are doing on the tour, but when they get there they realise what has happened. They manage to find Malcolm and bring him back, but after having a chase scene with the T-Rex. When they get back they're concerned because obviously Grant and the kids are missing, but they can't really do anything about it. Sattler then has a meal with Hammond where he then discusses how he just wanted to bring something real to the world. It kind of shows that he hasn't really learnt from his mistakes even though everything has gone wrong so far. From now on the story is basically in two parts, where we get to see Grant and the kids try to survive while the other group try to bring the power back onto the park. Grant ends up finding out that the dinos are actually breeding. This is because the frog DNA that's in the system allows them to change sex and allows them to breed in certain situations. This just kind of shows that the park is getting more out of hand. There's also a flock chase scene where they're chased by a flock of dinosaurs, but then the T-Rex shows up and eats one of them. This causes them to kind of stand there in shock for a moment before running away. While this is happening, the group have to figure out a plan on how to reboot the system, which they have to do from this power shed in a different building. Sattler and the hunter decide to go because Malcolm is injured and Hammond is too old. While they do this though, they realise that the raptor has escaped and is currently hunting them, so the hunter stays behind to keep an eye on him and lets Sattler run to the shed. Hammond then guides her through the radio by giving her instructions on where to go and how to get to where they need to be. This is where the two stories interlock with one another in a very great way. Grant and the kids are climbing an electrocuted fence that's obviously been turned off, while she's turning the power back on. It causes this very tension-filled scene where there's a countdown basically to when she does it, and luckily everyone makes it out alive, but the kid does get shot and we think that he is dead for a moment. Grant and the kids then make it to the main building where he then abandons the kid in the cafeteria so he can go find the other people. He then meets Sattler, who's just got away from the raptors, and she's very scared. The kids start just eating all this food and just are finally happy to get away from all the danger until they realise there's a raptor in the building with them. This ends up in a really cool kitchen scene where they end up deceiving the raptors and trapping one of them in the freezer, but escaping the other one. We then run into Grant and Sattler where they go to the control room so they can turn the power back on, but the raptor follows them and they have to hold the door closed while trying to turn the power back on. It's a very intense scene where you actually think the raptor's going to come and get them, but then they manage to turn it back on just in time. They then have to escape through the vents where the raptor ends up jumping up to try and eat them, which is really cool. Afterwards they end up in the main atrium where the skeleton is hanging above the ceiling. This is where they jump on the bones to escape the raptor, but the raptor then joins them, breaking the skeleton. They all end up floating around on different pieces of bone and slowly falling to the floor as this raptor is still chasing them. This ends when the T-Rex comes in and fights the raptor and obviously wins. This allows the people to escape where Hammond is waiting outside in a truck and they drive away to safety. In the end we get a nice helicopter scene where they're flying away from the island and all connecting and bonding again. They're all just happy to be alive and escape the dangers of the island. Overall I think the plot of this film works very well. It's full of tension and horror, but not so much that I don't think everyone can enjoy this, even if you're not a big horror fan. It brings up a lot of questions about life and morality and what things are right and wrong. Also, I think the way that they give you exposition and info dump on you is done in a way that it works and you don't actually feel like you're just being told information about the film. Alan Grant in this film is a very hands-on, hard-working man who is an expert in his field. Obviously he doesn't like kids and I don't think he really likes people in general, but obviously through the film he gets stuck with the kids and has to protect them, so he learns to like them. When he learns to appreciate the kids, he even throws away his claw that he used to scare kids away with. John Hammond in this film is the rich guy who built the park in the first place. He's a very cheerful, hopeful guy, but he's also a splurger with his money. He's a very typical old guy who's stuck in his way and mainly focuses on what he wants. He's too proud to admit his mistakes and he's also a little bit of a sexist. It's not till the end of the film that he realises what he's done and then changes his mind and helps him escape. Ellie Sattler is a very friendly and cheerful woman. She's very smart at what she does, but she's also brave and confident. She's not a very stereotypical woman, but I think that's really good in this film. A lot happens to her throughout the film, but I don't think she really changes a lot, just like Ian Malcolm. Ian Malcolm in this film is our voice of reason. He's cheerful, snarky, but very skeptical of what is happening. He's the one who asks all the questions and gets all the answers. But in the end, he doesn't really change much. The only thing that's happened to him is that he's got injured and then makes more jokes. At the start, the kids are very typical and curious, but also annoying, but I don't know if that's because we're seeing them through Grant's point of view. The girl is very fascinated with things, but she's also scared to try new things. But I think by the end of the film, she gains a bit more confidence to do that. While the boy, on the other hand, he's very curious about dinosaurs and knows a lot about them, but I think at the end he learns to be a bit more cautious since of what happened to him. Robert the Hunter guy is very knowledgeable in dinosaurs, but we don't really know much else about him. The only thing that I think is kind of cool about him is that when he dies, he appreciates how the raptors have managed to trap him and hunt him down before getting him. We don't really learn much about the bad guy except for that he has a grudge against Hammond for some reason. I like how he dies from his own actions. He caused the breakdown which causes all the dinosaurs to escape, and then the dinosaurs got back at him for what he did. The cinematography in this film is great. I honestly love the dark scenes the most though because of their minimal lighting and they still look awesome. I like how they use a range of shots such as close-up for the horror sequences but also really wide shots for scale comparison. Throughout the film they also change focus, have really good movement and even use reflections which I think work really well. My favourite thing about the cinematography though is the lighting and I think it just looks great. For the editing in this film, I think the main thing I have to talk about is the sound. The music works so well and just tells the audience how they should be feeling, and you really do feel it with the characters. The dramatic sound effects that they use for like jump scares and other different elements also work really well. The sounds that they did for the dinosaurs' roars and the different sounds that they make throughout the film also sound amazing. The mix of CGI and models for the dinosaurs works really well in this film and actually makes them feel real. Obviously the CGI isn't the best, but at the time it was really good and was still new technology. There are a few inconsistencies throughout the film, such as hands being in places where they shouldn't be, or things being there then not being there in the next shot, or people just being different places when cuts are being made. Also there's a scene where the girl hangs from a vent and it's obviously a stunt double being done and her face is CGI'd onto her, but when she gets pulled up it looks really weird and kind of unsettling. Overall, obviously I love this film and it holds a lot of nostalgia for me from when I was a kid. I recommend this film for everyone. Obviously it's an older film and probably not everyone will love it now, but I think it's still a great film that anyone can enjoy. On my scale I'm going to give it an 8.5 out of 10 and just recommend it for everybody. Comment down below what your opinion of Jurassic Park is or if you have any other film recommendations for me. I'm going to be working on a new project soon and creating a new short film, so keep an eye out for that because that will be up shortly. Thank you for watching the video and I really hope that you enjoyed it. Bye! Hey, doing this again. Actually went well. Okay. I'm doing this so well today. I'm on point. Shh, you should enjoy this film. That was actually good. Wow. Oh, but obviously, I didn't like fuck. There's a little pupil all that. Pupil? Obviously, they're archaeologists. Oh, my eyeball. Nice. I did it. Same with the teasel? Back for my break. I say that a lot of the time. It works really well. I think I did that right. Let's try.